Hello, good afternoon. My name is David Udunaya, and I'm the coordinator of Chess Development Program here in Liverpool, United Kingdom. And this afternoon, we'll be looking at basic chess endgames, looking at some common endgame positions that you'll come across as a chess player, either as a grandmaster or a beginner or average or club player. You're going to find yourself in this situation. Although I would say that for grandmasters, because of their deep knowledge of chess endgame, probably would have either taken a draw or just given up. But as a average or intermediate chess player, you find yourself in this position. It is very important for you to know what to do. For instance, in this chess position we have here, if it was white to play, then this is a one game for white. But if it is black to play, there's all the possibility that black can draw this game. Actually, with good play, black can draw this game. So I'm going to be teaching you this, how to play this end game as black. Your pawn down against a king and a pawn, and then white is marching along his pawn down the rank to get a queen and then win the game. But you as black, making the right moves, can actually draw this game, and that's what I'm going to quickly demonstrate for you, as we go through this endgame training. Now, white, the first move that black has to consider making is king to d8, and the reason for this is that by playing king to d8, black is able to maintain what is known in endgame, fundamental endgame, as opposition. Opposition is one of the important tools that every chess player has to know when it comes to endgame. When two kings have a face-off, they face each other on a rank, either diagonally or horizontally or vertically. Whoever moves first loses opposition. So it's very important that the move you make here is king d8, holding the opposition. And you have to be careful that every other move apart from king d8 is going to lose. For example, king e7. If you play king e7 here, one thing is that you have not achieved opposition, and then you give white the opportunity to play king e5, and now he has opposition, and then it's going to be very difficult for you to draw this game. In fact, after your next move, white's next move is going to be a win. So let's go back here now. So instead of playing king d8, say you decided to play king d7, maintaining opposition. But the problem with this is that when you decide to oppose the white king by coming to king to d7, white will respond with king to d5, and now you're going to have to move. And when you move, you're going to lose opposition, and once you lose opposition, that's the end of the game, because after you play king e7, white is going to respond with king e5, and now he has the opposition. And by the time you move to king to d7, you move to king f6, and it's going to be impossible for you to stop that pawn from queen, because when you play king e8 to try and stand in front of the pawn and oppose the pawn, it simply plays king e6, obtaining opposition again. And when you move either to king f8, or if you move to this square here, or f8, whichever way you go, say you go to king f8, white will just respond to king d7, and that pawn is going to be unstoppable. So let's go back to original position. So now you have played. So the best move to make is king d8, obtaining what is known in endgame as distant opposition. Always make sure that when you're maintaining a distant opposition, that you have the number of squares between you and the opposing king should be odd number. So you always make sure when there's an odd number of space between you and the opposing king, it means that by the time the other king makes the first move and then you make your move, is there's always going to be one square in between the two of you, and then you will have opposition. Say for example, white moves to d5 here, you'll be able to move your king here, and then there'll be one more space between, and then it will be white's turn to move. So here, white not wanting to lose opposition plays king d5, and here it maintains opposition. And say instead of playing king d5, white decided to play king to e5. Then what you do is that you play your king to e7, maintaining opposition and also having the opportunity to draw the game. So it's very important that you understand this concept of opposition. Now, so back to king d5 here. So based on what we just said now, the correct move for you as black is to maintain opposition by playing king to d7. Yeah, at this point I must say that because white has an extra pawn, it means he's got extra moves, and he has what we call a waiting move. And that means he doesn't have to move his king, he can just move his pawn to e5. And that means you have to move, and by moving you lose the opposition. But all is not lost, because there's two free spaces between the pawn on e5 and the 8th rank. So there's still space, there's still time for you to regain opposition and join the game. So the correct move is for you to oppose the pawn, make sure you stay there. And in this box here, we have this box that I've already drawn now. It's white's turn to move, and as long as you have this position in this box, white cannot move his king. If white has to move his king and moves it out of that box, then it'll be easy for you to draw the game, because all you have to do is just move to this square here. So white has no choice but to play e6, and now you have to move back. Now don't forget that the white cannot advance his pawn without the support of the king, and that means that the pawn can't just march down the rank. The king, he has to be in support of the king. So in your next move, what you need to consider is this: because you also want, as the key for you drawing this game is for you to maintain a position at every opportunity. What you do is you make the move king to e8, hoping that by the time white plays his king to d6, you can now maintain opposition. Now be very careful here. So from this point, from e6, don't make the mistake of going to king d8, because if you do, white gains the position, and then you have to move, and then he plays pawn to e7, and the only square for you to move is king f7, then key d7, queens the pawn, and wins the game. So you have to be very, very careful where you move your pawn. So always make sure that when you find yourself in this position, always move back one step backwards in the direction of the pawn. So that the correct move is king e8. So white has no other move than to play king d6, because if white decides to go to king e5 here, what happens is that you just come to king e7, and that's just going to be a draw. So okay, so we go back here. So now in this position, now white plays king d6, and your only move is to oppose the king by playing king d8. And by the time you advance the pawn, which is the only move you can make anyway, you play your king to e8. And in this position, if the king moves away from the pawn, he will lose that pawn. And the only way from this point that the white king can protect the pawn is to move to king e8. And at this point in time, black has no more squares to move, and this is a stalemate, and then the game is drawn. So you have to understand very carefully that when you find yourself in this position like this, always remember opposition, opposing to the king, and always remember the right square. This square will be opposition. This place square also be opposition. But remember, the correct opposition square to obtain is the one that has odd number of squares in between you and the opposing king, whose move is next to make. I hope you've learned a little bit. Have you learned some things in this end game that we've been through? Is a common king and pawn ending that you're going to find yourself in most games you play. And even if you don't get to this position while in the middle game or towards the end game, you can already predict that if you find yourself in this position, what the game is going to end up, depending on who is to move. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope to do more recordings for you. So, bye. Have a nice time.